I knew we were screwed the moment Jordan Walsh walked into that conference room like he owned the place, which technically he did. His daddy Richard owned the company. But watching this 28-year-old kid in a designer hoodie dismiss 15 years of my work as legacy garbage while my own son Danny sat 3 seats down, that's when I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. I'm Gary Brooks, 49 years old, and I've been writing code since before Jordan knew what a computer was. I built the backbone of TechFlow Dynamics' entire operation, the Core Vault platform that processes every order, every payment, every supplier transaction. But to Jordan, I was just another old guy taking up space and salary budget. The meeting started normal enough. Jordan had called all the engineers together to announce his revolutionary vision for the company's future. Danny caught my eye and rolled his. Even at 22, my kid understood corporate BS when he heard it. He'd been working as a junior developer for 8 months now, and I could see the politics were already wearing on him. "Listen up, team," Jordan said, clapping his hands like he was calling a football huddle. "I've been analyzing our architecture, and honestly, it's a mess. We're stuck in the Stone Age with this monolithic nightmare. We're pivoting to microservices, AI-driven, cloud-native by Q3. Around the table, I saw the usual suspects nodding along. Tyler from DevOps, who'd been there 6 months and still couldn't explain what a load balancer actually did. Sarah from Product, who thought Agile meant scheduling more meetings. These were Jordan's people, young, eager, and completely clueless about what kept the lights on. He clicked to his slide, a bunch of colorful circles and arrows that looked like something a kindergartner drew during snack time. But when I saw what he was actually proposing, my blood went cold. He wanted to delete the central processing core of our entire logistics platform, the thing that kept us from going bankrupt during the supply chain crisis in 2021. This legacy architecture, Jordan continued, pointing at my system diagram like it was a crime scene photo, is holding us hostage. We need velocity, we need scalability, we need to move fast and break things. Move fast and break things. Facebook's old motto, back when they were a college startup burning through venture capital instead of a company that actually had to make money. But Jordan loved that phrase. He'd used it in every meeting for the past month, usually right before suggesting we delete something that actually worked. "Excuse me," I said, clearing my throat. Heads turned. I hadn't spoken in one of these meetings in months. Jordan had made it clear that legacy thinkers weren't welcome in his brainstorming sessions. That legacy system handles 85% of our vendor compliance. You delete that node and you're not just upgrading, you're lobotomizing the company. The room went quiet. Danny straightened in his chair and I could see him trying to decide whether to back me up or keep his head down. Smart kid. He'd learned the office politics faster than I had. Jordan turned to me with that smile, the kind you practice in the mirror while listening to startup podcasts. He looked at my gray hair, my faded polo shirt that Susan had bought me 3 Christmases ago, then checked his Apple Watch like my time was already up. "And you are?" he asked, feigning ignorance. He knew exactly who I was. I was the line item on the budget that nobody understood but nobody dared cut. Yet. "Gary Brooks," I said, keeping it simple. "I built that backbone you're trying to surgically remove." Jordan chuckled, that wet, condescending sound that makes you want to reach for a napkin. "Right, Gary. Look, I appreciate what you did in the old days, but we're not running a museum here. We're building the future. Your monolithic code is holding us hostage. We need agility. We need velocity. We don't need whatever this patchwork is." Patchwork. That stung more than he knew. That patchwork had saved the company $2 million during the supply chain mess when everyone else's systems were failing. That patchwork processed $240 million in transactions last year without a single data breach or compliance violation. But to Jordan, if it wasn't built with this year's trendy framework, it was worthless. Danny shifted in his seat, and I could see the frustration building behind his eyes. He'd been asking me technical questions at home for months, trying to understand the systems he was working with. Unlike Jordan, Danny actually wanted to learn how things worked before suggesting we blow them up. "The platform integrates with 47 different vendor APIs," I continued, my voice steady despite the anger building in my chest. "Some of those integrations took months to negotiate and implement. You delete the core and you're not just breaking our system. You're breaking our relationships with suppliers who represent 60% of our revenue stream." Around the table, I saw a few of the senior developers nodding. They knew what I was talking about. They'd been there for the late nights and weekend deployments when we built those integrations. But the new hires, Jordan's army of fresh college grads who thought programming started with React and ended with Docker, they just looked confused. That's exactly the kind of legacy thinking that's holding us back, Jordan said, his voice getting sharper. We don't need complex integrations. We need simple, elegant solutions. Everything should be API first, microservices-based, containerized, buzzwords. That's all Jordan had. He could string together the latest tech terminology like a rap song, but ask him to actually debug a production issue at 2 a.m., and he'd probably Google how to restart server. Simple and elegant, I repeated. You know what's simple and elegant? A system that works. A system that doesn't crash when Black Friday traffic hits. A system that passes compliance audits without breaking a sweat. Jordan's smile faltered for just a second. He knew I was talking about the quarterly compliance audit we'd passed last month, the one where the auditors had specifically praised the robust architecture and comprehensive logging of the Core Vault platform, the platform he wanted to delete. See, here's what Jordan didn't know, and what Danny didn't know either, because I'd kept it quiet for years. Back in 2019, when TechFlow was just a chaotic startup with more lawsuits than customers and a business model that changed every Tuesday, they couldn't afford my consulting rate. I was freelancing then, charging $200 an hour for the kind of architecture work that Jordan probably thought happened by magic. So my lawyer, Roy Bull Martinez, a tough-as-nails guy who operates out of a strip mall office between a taco shop and a tax preparation service, but knows contracts like Mozart knew music, came up with a different arrangement. I didn't sign an employment contract. I signed a licensing agreement. I incorporated Steel Code Solutions LLC and licensed the Core Vault platform to TechFlow. Think of it like Microsoft Office. You don't buy the software, you buy the right to use it. And like any good landlord, I kept the master key. Jordan didn't know this. Jordan saw a graying programmer with 15 years at the company and assumed I was a legacy hire they'd inherited from the founder's charity case days. He thought he was firing dead weight. He didn't realize he was trying to evict his landlord while still living in the house. "Okay, Jordan," I said, leaning back in my chair. The plastic creaked under my weight. These conference room chairs had seen better days, just like most of the infrastructure Jordan wanted to replace. "You're the boss. Agility, velocity, got it. Glad we're on the same page," he smirked, turning back to his diagram. "We'll start sunsetting the old modules effective immediately. HR will be restructuring to align with our new vision." Restructuring. Corporate speak for firing anyone who remembers how things actually work. Around the table, I could see the fear in people's eyes. Tom from Database Admin looked like he was about to throw up. Maria from QA was already updating her LinkedIn profile on her phone under the table. Danny caught my eye again, and I gave him a small nod. "Stay calm," I was telling him. "Don't give them a reason to target you too." He was smart enough to read the subtext. "We'll be bringing in some consultants to help with the transition," Jordan continued. "Fresh perspectives, modern approaches. Sometimes you need outside eyes to see what's really possible." Consultants. Translation. We're going to pay strangers 3 times your salary to tell us the same things you've been saying for free, except they'll use newer buzzwords and charge us $500 an hour for the privilege. I didn't argue. I didn't throw anything at him, even though my coffee mug would have made a satisfying impact against that whiteboard full of meaningless arrows. I just sat there watching him pontificate about synergies and paradigm shifts while mentally calculating the blast radius of what he was about to do. The meeting wrapped up with Jordan's favorite closer. "Let's crush it, team." He actually said that with a straight face, like we were selling energy drinks instead of trying to keep a logistics company from imploding. As people filed out, Danny lingered near my desk. "Dad," he said quietly, "what just happened in there?" "Politics, son," I said, packing up my laptop. "The kind that makes good people do stupid things. But he can't just delete the core platform, right? I mean, everything connects to that. The payment processor, the inventory system, the shipping integration. It's all built around your architecture." Smart kid. He'd been paying attention during our technical discussions at home. Unlike Jordan, Danny actually understood dependencies and the difference between theory and reality. "He can try," I said. "Whether he succeeds is another question entirely." Danny looked worried. "Are you going to be okay?" I mean, this restructuring thing. I put a hand on his shoulder. Don't worry about your old man. Just focus on doing good work and learning everything you can. And Danny, maybe start backing up your personal files, just in case. The freeze-out started immediately. By Tuesday, my calendar invites had mysteriously disappeared. The weekly architecture sync, the monthly planning meeting, the Friday retrospective, all gone. I was sitting in my cubicle listening to muffled laughter from the glass conference room 10 feet away, watching Jordan hold court with his inner circle. Through the glass, I could see him pointing at the whiteboard where my system diagrams used to live. He was erasing them, replacing complex functional flowcharts with buzzwords like holistic integration and synergistic frameworks. Tyler was nodding enthusiastically, probably because he finally understood what was written on the board. It's amazing how fast you become invisible. 15 years of 70-hour weeks, 15 years of weekend calls to fix critical issues so the CEO could afford his lake house. Suddenly I was a ghost. People I'd mentored for years started avoiding eye contact in the hallway. They smelled the blood in the water. In corporate America, getting fired is contagious. Stand too close to the victim and management might decide you're part of the disease. I understood the self-preservation instinct, but it still stung watching colleagues I'd worked late nights with suddenly discover urgent bathroom breaks whenever I approached. Danny tried to keep me in the loop. He'd text me during lunch breaks. Jordan hired 3 new contractors. They're all talking about greenfield development and technical debt elimination. Or, the new guys keep asking me questions about your code. I'm not telling them anything specific, but they seem pretty clueless. Greenfield development. Jordan's fantasy of starting over with a clean slate, building everything from scratch, using whatever framework was trending on GitHub this week. He had no idea that the technical debt he wanted to eliminate included things like PCI compliance, SOX audit trails, and integration with legacy systems that couldn't be replaced without shutting down the business for 6 months. Thursday afternoon, I got a calendar invite that made my stomach drop. Quick sync, it said, meeting room B. Friday at 4 p.m. The classic Friday firing. Do it at the end of the day so the victim can't cause a scene and everyone has the weekend to forget they existed. I started packing that Thursday night. Not much, just a picture of my late wife Susan that I kept on my monitor, my lucky screwdriver set from my Navy days, and a small cactus that had somehow survived the office air quality for 3 years. The cactus was tougher than most of the developers Jordan had hired. I wiped my company laptop clean. Not just deleted files. I ran a military-grade scrubber on that drive. 7-pass overwrite, the kind the Pentagon uses when decommissioning hardware. Not because I had anything to hide, but because I'm a professional and I don't leave fingerprints. While the disk wipe was running, I checked the Steel Code Solutions banking account. The quarterly licensing payment was due in 48 hours. Usually the CFO had it on autopay through the corporate accounting system, but he'd been restructured last month too. Another casualty of Jordan's efficiency improvements. I refreshed the page. No pending transaction. I refreshed it again an hour later. Still, nothing. They were ghosting the payment, assuming that since I collected a salary, which was actually a retainer fee disguised as payroll for tax convenience, they owned everything I'd built. They thought they owned me, therefore they owned the code. I pulled up my copy of the licensing agreement. I kept a digital copy encrypted on my personal laptop, but I also had the original signed in wet ink by the founder, locked in my fireproof safe at home next to Susan's jewelry and my discharge papers from the Navy. Clause 3.1, Payment Obligations. Failure to remit licensing fees within 24 hours of the due date constitutes a material breach. Clause 3.2, Cure Period. There's no cure period for willful non-payment or unauthorized modification of the source material. Jordan had already violated the unauthorized modification clause by trying to patch his new microservices architecture on top of my core without proper API access. His contractors had been poking around the codebase for weeks, leaving their fingerprints all over configurations they didn't understand. And now he was about to violate the payment clause. I could have warned him. Could have walked into his office and said, "Hey, hotshot, you're about to default on the software that runs your entire business." But then I remembered how he'd dismissed me in front of my own son, how he'd called my life's work legacy garbage while planning to build his career on its foundation, so I let the clock tick. Friday at 4 p.m. came like a death sentence. Meeting room B was one of those glass fishbowls near the elevators where everyone could watch your execution. Jordan was there, arms crossed, posing like he was about to be featured on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine. His designer jeans probably cost more than most people's car payments. Patty Johnson from HR sat at the table looking like she'd rather be anywhere else, possibly dead. Patty was a decent person trapped in a corporate machine, the kind who communicated exclusively in sad smiles and pamphlets about Cobra insurance benefits. "Have a seat, Gary," Patty said softly, like she was talking to a spooked horse. I sat down and placed a manila folder on the table. Jordan eyed it suspiciously, probably thinking it was a desperate PowerPoint presentation to save my job. If only he knew. "Gary," Jordan started, not letting Patty do her job, "we've been evaluating team structure, and as we move toward our high-velocity cloud-native future, we're finding that your skill set doesn't align with our trajectory." "Trajectory," I repeated, nodding slowly, like a missile into a mountain. His jaw tightened. Behind him, through the glass wall, I could see a few of the engineers pretending to work while obviously watching the show. Danny wasn't among them. Smart kid had probably found somewhere else to be. "We're terminating your employment effective immediately," Jordan continued. "Standard severance package, 2 weeks' pay. We'll need your badge and laptop." Patty slid papers across the table with the enthusiasm of a funeral director. "We also need you to sign this NDA and non-disparagement agreement to receive the severance." I didn't touch the papers. "Just to be clear, you're terminating our professional relationship completely?" "That's what fired means," Jordan snapped. The mask was slipping now. He wanted me gone so he could hire 3 more kids like Tyler with my salary budget and build his empire of inexperience. "Okay," I said calmly. I pulled out my badge and slid it across the table. Then I placed my company laptop next to it. "I'm no longer an employee." "Good," Jordan said, pushing off from the wall. "Security will escort you out." "Wait," I said, putting my hand on the manila folder. "We're done with the employment part. Now we need to discuss the vendor relationship." Jordan frowned like I was speaking a foreign language. "What are you talking about?" I opened the folder and spun the licensing agreement around so they could read it. The pages were neatly organized with yellow highlights marking the key clauses. Roy Martinez knew how to prepare documents for maximum impact. "I don't work for you, Jordan. I never really did. My company, Steel Code Solutions, licenses the technology that runs your procurement, logistics, and payment processing. I was just part of the package, on-site support included in the premium tier." Jordan laughed, actually laughed. It was that hollow sound people make when their brain can't process what they're hearing. "This is some old paperwork from the startup days. We own everything you wrote while you were here. Intellectual property assignment. It's standard." "Actually," I said, tapping paragraph 4 with my finger, "all code, architecture, and algorithms remain sole property of Steel Code Solutions. TechFlow gets a non-exclusive, revocable right to use the software, contingent on timely payment and adherence to usage guidelines." I watched his eyes scan the paragraph. I could see the exact moment his brain started to catch up with reality, but his ego refused to let it sink in. "This is," he sputtered, his face turning a shade of red that clashed with his hipster beard. "You were on payroll. That voids this contract." "Check with legal," I said, leaning back in my chair. I was a 1099 contractor for the first 2 years, then moved to W-2 structure for administrative convenience per Addendum C, but IP rights never transferred. Steel Code still holds the copyright registration. Patty's mouth had fallen open. She was frantically taking notes, probably trying to figure out how this had slipped past legal review for 5 years. I stood up. "Here's your situation, Jordan. You just fired the on-site support. That's fine. I was getting tired of the coffee anyway. But you also missed the quarterly licensing payment that was due yesterday. That's a material breach of contract." "I'm not paying you a dime," Jordan hissed, his composure completely gone now. "This is extortion." "It's a contract," I said, walking toward the door. "And since you just terminated the only person who knows how to maintain the system," I shrugged. "Well, good luck figuring out why it stops working." I paused and looked back at Patty. "You might want to back up the payroll data tonight. Just a friendly tip from someone who actually knows how the servers work." I looked at Jordan one last time. Clause 6, Jordan. Read it carefully. "You have 72 hours to cure the breach, but since you just fired the only person who knows the admin passwords..." I let that hang in the air like smoke from a house fire. I walked out past my old desk, past the break room where Tyler was explaining blockchain to an intern who looked confused about everything, past the motivational posters about disrupting the status quo. In the parking lot, I lit a cigarette, my first in 6 months, and got in my F-150. The manila folder went on the passenger seat next to my thermos and a copy of Motorcyclist magazine. I drove straight to the good liquor store, the one with the bourbon tasting counter and a guy named Pete who actually knew the difference between wheated and rye mash bills. I bought a bottle of Maker's Mark. It tasted like justice. Back home in my garage workshop, surrounded by motorcycle parts and hand tools that had actual history, I set up my command center. My personal laptop, the one with the encrypted partition and the VPN connection that routed through 3 different countries. Not for anything illegal, just because paranoia is a survival skill in the tech industry. I logged into the Steel Code Solutions remote admin panel. It was a beautiful piece of engineering, if I do say so myself. Every hour, TechFlow's servers would ping mine with a simple question: am I still licensed to exist? And for 5 years, my server had replied with the digital equivalent of yes, carry on. The status screen was all green lights. Inventory module, active. Payment gateway, active. Vendor API, active. Customer portal, active. Like Christmas decorations on a tree that was about to get chopped down. I poured 2 fingers of bourbon and admired the elegant simplicity of the licensing system. Jordan thought technology was magic. That code just happened by itself. He didn't understand that every system has a creator, and smart creators always leave themselves a way back in. I navigated to the license status panel. Current status, grace period. Grace period expires, 16 hours, 23 minutes. Jordan was probably at some trendy Austin bar right now, celebrating his victory with craft cocktails and telling his MBA friends about how he'd optimized human capital allocation. He thought my contract was a bluff, that I was just a bitter old-timer making empty threats. He was about to learn the difference between a bluff and a royal flush. I changed the system setting from grace period to strict enforcement and queued up a command that would execute at exactly 8 a.m. Monday morning. Revoke license key 001. Suspend all services pending payment verification. I didn't hit enter yet. I wanted to give them the weekend to figure it out, to maybe have someone in legal actually read the contract they'd been ignoring for 5 years. But I knew they wouldn't. Jordan was too arrogant, and Richard was too busy counting money to pay attention to details. My phone buzzed with a text from Danny. "Dad, are you okay? Heard about the meeting. Jordan's acting like he just solved world hunger. This place is getting weird." I texted back, "I'm fine, son. Might want to update your resume this weekend. And maybe call in sick Monday morning." He responded with a confused emoji, but he was smart enough not to ask for details over company messaging. I spent the weekend doing things I hadn't done in years, slept past 6 a.m. without an alarm, went to that diner on South Lamar and had chicken and waffles that probably violated 3 different dietary guidelines. Worked on my Harley in the garage, replacing the clutch cable that had been slipping for months. There's something therapeutic about working with your hands on machinery you actually understand. Unlike the corporate world where everything is built on abstractions and political compromises, motorcycles are honest. If something's broken, it doesn't work. If you fix it right, it purrs like a contented cat. Sunday evening, I sat in my workshop with the bourbon bottle and watched the countdown timer on my laptop. The grace period would expire in 12 hours. TechFlow's servers would wake up Monday morning and ask their usual question: am I still licensed to exist? And for the first time in 5 years, the answer would be payment required. My phone had been quiet all weekend, which meant Jordan still hadn't figured out what was coming. He was probably spending his weekend at some tech conference, networking with other disruptors and learning about the latest frameworks that would revolutionize everything. Monday morning, 7:55 a.m. I was sitting in my kitchen with fresh coffee and yesterday's newspaper, watching the clock like it was New Year's Eve. TechFlow would be waking up now. The warehouse teams in Austin and Phoenix would be logging in to process weekend orders. The automated procurement system would try to order $200,000 worth of raw materials from suppliers who'd been working with the company for years. At exactly 8 a.m., I opened my laptop and watched the status lights flicker from green to red like a Christmas tree having a seizure. Inventory module, unlicensed. Payment gateway, access denied. Vendor API, critical failure. Customer portal, authentication error. It was beautiful in its simplicity. My phone stayed quiet until 8:03 a.m. Then the alert started flooding in, not from Jordan, but from the automated monitoring system I'd forgotten to unsubscribe from when I left. Alert. Sev1 critical outage, main database unresponsive. Error code 402, payment required. Error 402. I'd repurposed that obscure HTTP status code specifically for this moment. It literally means payment required, though I doubted anyone in that building was smart enough to Google it. At 8:15, my phone rang with an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then again. I could picture the scene. Warehouse scanners unable to authenticate inventory, trucks backing up at loading docks, customer service phones lighting up like a Vegas casino. At 8:30, Danny texted, "Dad, OMG, everything's down. Dashboard just says contact administrator." Jordan's literally kicking server racks. Security had to stop him. I almost choked on my coffee. Kicking hardware. The universal sign of someone who thinks technology works by magic and can be fixed through percussive maintenance. At 9 a.m., TechFlow's main number showed up on my caller ID. I let it ring twice before answering with a groggy voice. "Hello? Gary, this is Jordan." His voice was 2 octaves higher than usual, tight with panic. "We have a situation. The system's completely down. Everything's offline. Did you leave something running?" "I don't work there anymore, Jordan," I said, watering my kitchen plants with deliberate calm. "Turned in my laptop Friday, remember? No access to anything." "Don't give me that," he shouted. I could hear chaos in the background. Phones ringing, people yelling, someone crying. The error message says license invalid. "What did you do?" "Oh," I said, letting realization dawn in my voice. "The license renewal." "Yeah, I mentioned that Friday. Did you guys pay the invoice? I told you we're not paying your extortion." "It's not extortion, Jordan. It's a software license. Like Windows or Office, except this one actually keeps your business running. Since you didn't pay, and since you fired the on-site administrator, the software reverted to its default state." "Which is what?" "Off." The silence stretched long enough for me to finish watering my plants and start loading the dishwasher. "Turn it back on," Jordan demanded. "Right now, or I'll sue you into the ground. I'll ruin you." "Jordan," I said, my voice dropping to that steel tone I'd perfected during 20 years of dealing with difficult clients, "you're currently using unlicensed intellectual property. My lawyer's drafting a cease and desist as we speak. If you try to bypass the lock, that's a DMCA violation. Federal crime. You look good in orange?" More silence. Then muffled voices in the background. I heard "she's right" and massive liability from what sounded like their legal counsel. "Just fix it," Jordan pleaded, his corporate bravado completely evaporated. "We're losing $8,000 a minute. Our suppliers are canceling contracts. Stock's already down 12% in pre-market." "Sounds like a you problem," I said. "I'm unemployed now. Got lots of free time, but I don't do charity work for companies that fire me. What do you want?" "Put Richard on the phone. He's in emergency board meetings. Drag him out because in about 10 minutes your automated vendor payment system's going to attempt processing this morning's supplier payments. Since the encryption keys are locked, those transactions will fail. Your entire supply chain will be officially dead by lunch." I heard running footsteps and urgent voices. A new voice came on, deeper but currently shaking like a leaf. Richard Walsh, the CEO who'd built his fortune on technology he didn't understand. "Gary, what the hell's happening?" "Morning, Richard. I believe your son evicted his landlord without realizing he was still living in the house." Richard tried the family approach immediately. "Gary, emotions are running high here. Jordan made a mistake. He's young. He didn't understand the complexities of your arrangement. Come back and we'll discuss a significant raise." I was on my back porch now, watching my neighbor finally win his weekly battle with his lawnmower. Unlike Richard's situation, the neighbor's problem had a simple solution. "I don't want my job back, Richard. That bridge didn't just burn, it was professionally demolished." "Then what is this? Blackmail?" "Vendor dispute," I corrected. "You're using proprietary software you haven't paid for. Since you terminated the support contract, I'm exercising my right to terminate the license. You have 2 options." I let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. Option A, migrate to a new system. Jordan seems confident he can build something better. Maybe he can accomplish in 6 weeks what took me 6 years. Good luck with that. We can't migrate, Richard snapped. We'd be dead in the water for months. Option B, purchase a perpetual license for the source code. Buy out Steelcode's intellectual property, own it completely, never see me again. Fine. How much? $1.8 million. That's highway robbery. That's 0.75% of the revenue my system processed last year, plus a consultation fee for the emotional distress your son's management style caused me. I won't pay it. Okay, good luck with the migration. Oh, and Richard? The data compliance protocol initiates in 1 hour. If the license isn't renewed, the system automatically purges customer data to comply with GDPR and PCI requirements. Wouldn't want to keep personal information on unlicensed software. That would be illegal. You rigged it to delete everything. I programmed it to be compliant, I said. That wasn't entirely true. The purge was more of a safety feature I'd weaponized. But he didn't need to know that. I need time to get board approval. You have 53 minutes. I'll send the DocuSign to your personal email. I hung up and went back to my coffee. The next 45 minutes were pure entertainment. Danny was live blogging the corporate meltdown from inside the building. Legal team found the contract. General counsel asked Jordan if he actually graduated law school. Richard's screaming about calling the FBI. Legal told him that since it's a contract dispute and TechFlow breached first, the FBI would probably just laugh. Jordan's in his office crying, actual tears. Keep saying this is sabotage. At 10:45 a.m. with 15 minutes left on the countdown, my phone rang. Helen Rodriguez from Legal, a sharp woman who'd always been straight with me. Gary, we've reviewed the documentation thoroughly. Hi, Helen. What's the verdict? The contract's bulletproof. Ironclad, you might say. Richards authorized the wire transfer. The second it hits my account, I push the patch that updates the license to perpetual. Red lights turn green, business as usual. Sending it now. I refreshed my banking app and watched my net worth change from comfortable retirement maybe to disappear to Costa Rica tomorrow if I want. Pending transaction, $1,800,000. Source, TechFlow Dynamics Inc. It's there, I said. Unlock our systems, Gary. I opened my laptop and typed the commands I'd been rehearsing all weekend. Update license status, perpetual. Cancel compliance purge. Restore full functionality. Enter. 2 minutes later, Danny texted, "We're green. Everything's coming back online. People are literally cheering. It's like Apollo 13 in here." But I didn't cheer. I felt a crushing exhaustion wash over me, the adrenaline finally leaving my system. It was over. I'd won, secured my future, and taught Jordan's generation a lesson about respecting the people who build the foundations they stand on. But I was also done in Austin. Word would spread through the tech community. I'd be known as the developer who held a company hostage. Some would call it genius, others would call it dangerous. I was fine with both. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in the executive conference room at Megatrans Corporation in Dallas, TechFlow's biggest competitor. Logan Hayes, their VP of engineering, had the kind of smile that meant serious business. Gary Brooks. Heard you burned Austin to the ground and then sold them the ashes. Just enforced a contract, I said. Business is business. I respect that. We need someone who understands enterprise logistics architecture. Word is TechFlow had a miracle system. Not miracle, just solid engineering. And yes, I built it. Can you build something similar for us? I smiled and pulled out a fresh folder. I can't give you that code. Sold it, IP transfer complete. But that system's getting old anyway. Written in Java 8, tied to legacy frameworks. Logan's face fell slightly. However, I continued, I've been designing something new in my spare time. Rust-based, microservices architecture, cloud-native from the ground up. It wouldn't just match TechFlow's performance. It would leave them in the dust. Timeline? 6 months with the right team. No politics, no product evangelists, just experienced engineers who understand that good code is built on proven fundamentals, not trendy frameworks. Logan extended his hand. Welcome to Megatrans, Gary. When can you start? I walked out with a consulting contract that made the $1.8 million look like a signing bonus. 6 months later, Megatrans launched Logicor Prime. It destroyed the competition. TechFlow's stock dropped 25% in the first quarter as customers migrated to our more reliable, faster platform. They were stuck with my old system, maintained by a skeleton crew too terrified to change anything significant. Jordan left TechFlow 6 months later and pivoted to cryptocurrency consulting. Perfect career move. Another industry where you can sell hot air and disappear before anyone realizes the balloon's empty. Danny followed me to Dallas after getting his degree. Kid's got good instincts and even better timing. I'm writing this from my home office in a house I own outright, with a view of White Rock Lake and a garage full of motorcycles I actually have time to ride. The framed contract hangs on my wall like a diploma. Paragraph 6. The clause that bought me freedom. Sometimes late at night I check the logs on Logicor Prime and watch commerce flowing through algorithms I designed. I think about all the Gary Brooks out there, the invisible architects who keep the world running while Jordans take credit for the electricity. We're out here, we're watching, and we always read the fine print. So next time some 28-year-old in designer jeans calls your life's work legacy garbage, don't get mad, don't make threats, just make sure you own the keys to the kingdom. And if you have to burn the house down, charge them for the matches. This is Gary Brooks, signing off. I've got a 1969 Camaro waiting for a carburetor rebuild and a bottle of bourbon that's old enough to vote.